Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished professional from Kent, UK, Patience Ogunbona. Patience, welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Patience is the Chief Executive Officer, corporate and business trainer. She's a John Maxwell certified executive coach, and she's an author. So, Patience, before we start talking about coaching, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Okay, so thank you for that. I started out as a chartered internal auditor. So I started out in accounting in the corporate world about 18 years ago, and then branched off into auditing, which I loved because I realized I love people. So became a chartered internal auditor and worked in a lot of diverse service-based organizations. And the key thing was to help ensure that they had their risk management nailed down and putting controls in place to achieve your goals and your objectives. So by the end of 2017, I had suffered a few life crises in my life. I had got experience of coaching and was constantly on a personal development journey. But by end of 2017, I reevaluated my life, especially when I lost my mom, who had lived a life of legacy, really, and left a lot to be proud of when she died young. So I thought to myself, what about you, Patience? What is your legacy going to be? And in the midst of that trauma of losing her, plus reevaluating my life, I chose in 2018 to take the leap from corporate, knowing that there's a lot more to me, and set up my own company, ATI Coaching, Consulting and Training Limited, which I have been doing for since then. But 2020, I then niched down to work with introverted women because I felt like there was some lived experience that I could share to help other introverted women thrive and succeed and lead.
Very interesting. So, since you've mentioned introverted female entrepreneurs and leaders, how do you all help them overcome self-doubt, and what are some of the other challenges they face?
Yes, so a lot of times introversion is really about being too overwhelmed by external stimulus, and that then means shrinking back and really trying to process what's happening in a very extroverted, a very loud world. If you're an introvert, you hear more noise than the extrovert would. And so one of the big challenges, therefore, is because of the shrinking back, there is also that self-doubt. Can I really cope in a fast-paced, noisy world? And the key thing, therefore, is people then numb down their ambitions, and kind of then that prevents the fulfillment of potential. So how I help introverted women is to tune back into that ambition and step out boldly and courageously, what I call courageous self-leadership. And as a result of stepping out, you want to then develop and expand your potential. So helping them step into their potential. But the reason why I do a lot of leadership coaching is because I believe that with leadership skills, you can elevate your thinking, elevate your confidence, and therefore you don't have to be loud to be proud, but you can then still deliver. So I then help them to enhance their leadership skills so that they can step up and lead and step out into the real world. That all those combinations will help with overcoming self-doubt, overcoming struggles as an introvert, I believe.
Very interesting. And you developed a model called the aligned introvert method. And then you also developed 4 tips to help introverts find focus to succeed in a noisy and fast world. First, tell me about your aligned introvert method.
So the aligned introvert method is designed around helping you find alignment back into who you are. Because a lot of introverts feel that I can't be introverted and succeed. I have to be someone else. And as a result of trying to be someone else, you put on a mask, you're not yourself, there's no authenticity. So alignment is about getting you back into that, tuning into who you are, but also developing processes and systems and strategies around that knowledge of who you are, and using that to create a business that works for you and gives you that satisfaction and fulfillment that you want. So I call it, for short, TAIM. That's take aim. So it just means I will give you strategies to help you to move from a place of self-doubt, from a place of lack of clarity, to discover, to develop, design, and deliver what you are meant to deliver in your business.
Interesting. And now tell me a little bit about your 4 tips to help introverts find focus to succeed in a noisy and fast world.
Yeah, so interestingly, for introverts, with the amount of noise, especially with 2020 coming up, the online space, which used to be like not as noisy as it is now, you have stolen focus. So you have to bring yourself back. Already you have a very busy mind, and then you have the external stimulus, which can be double whammy. So I think for me, the 4 tips I would give would be to know yourself, know where you self-sabotage, know the barriers that you face, also know your strengths. You know, we need to know our strengths, then control the noise. Basically, it's about saying, this is too much for me, finding the courage to say, I will step back away from the noise and not be afraid of doing that. Because a lot of times, the whole business and entrepreneur journey is about go, 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 right? So if you step back, you're odd, like you're not pushing hard enough. But then again, you need to step back from the noise so you can hear yourself. So controlling the noise. The third thing is you monitor your energy levels. A lot of times, to be able to deliver and attract people, you need to bring the right kind of energy flow. But with the whole overwhelm that happens to a lot of introverts, your energy will dip. So you, to maintain that focus, to maintain that attraction process, being able to monitor your energy. And the last one is create momentum one step at a time. And one thing I say is, when I talk about the speed that is needed, you have the tortoise and you have the fox or the hare. Now the tortoise, the hare uses their speed as a way to survive. But the tortoise, because they don't go fast, they have a hard shell. And so they're perseverant. So if you see yourself, I think that introverts can maybe be likened to a tortoise, and therefore perseverance is one of your superpowers. Just go at your own pace and deliver what you need to deliver. Yeah.
Oh, fascinating. And patience, when you look at your own amazing corporate journey from the world of audit to becoming a coach, what would you say has been the role of your own background, and how has that supported you in your coaching philosophy, your style, and your values?
So my background, I've mentioned my mother. I grew up with a mother who did not, as an only child, extreme poverty. She came from, but she, at the time of her death, people were coming to me and saying, we might be burying a woman in the physical form, but in her mindset and in her heart, we're burying a man. And that is because of her drive to succeed despite, and not to be defined by that narrative of poverty.
Correct.
As a result of that, she kind of had a positive can-do approach to life. She did a lot. She moved from being a nurse to becoming a HR director, and winning an award in the process. She was a property developer. She got involved in oil. She did a lot of, but in the process also helped a lot of people, because she knew how difficult it was to not have a helper or a mentor. She became a mentor, a coach, a helper to many people. A lot of people who were crying by her graveside were doing so because they thought, we need to replace this key personality in our lives. So as somebody who coaches people, I believe that my space is to help with transformation, and empowerment to discover your potential, to create wealth for future generations. So a key part of why I do what I do is the creation of legacy, because legacy drives what I do as well.
Very interesting. And you mentioned that, a big role has been played in your life by your mother. Have there been any other individuals who've had a strong influence on you that have influenced your own coaching style?
Well, I would say that the first book I read when I tried to step out of self-doubt was a book by Steve Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
So I'll say one of the key people that influenced me was Steve Covey. Then we have John Maxwell, obviously, as I'm part of the Maxwell leadership team. I read his book called Today Matters. And I just thought, it's time to start making sure that each day of my life counts towards where I'm going.
Correct.
But the third really impactful person was not somebody I knew very closely, but somebody who I met during, I had signed up to go for a confidence class, and she was the person who took that class. She was an NLP coach. And something about the way she handled it, and subsequently, I had a 12-week coaching opportunity very, very early on in my career. That really helped me with the NLP coach. It was one statement she made that really empowered my way of thinking. She said, if it's going to be patience, it's definitely up to you. Stop sabotaging yourself. And that word self-sabotage made me realize that what coaching helps most people do is to stop sabotaging their own success, step out of their own way, stop looking back and look forward. So that was a great influence for me to understand that there are key things that will help people make that shift to become who they want to become and to really see that person emerging.
Very interesting. And when you look at your own coaching, what, in your opinion, are some of your own unique perspectives that you bring to your coaching?
So I really tune into my core strengths, and I love to, so I don't know if you've heard of the Gallup Strengths Finder. When I took that, of course, it was in alignment, and I'm a DISC personality consultant as well. So everything comes in alignment. My 5 strengths are being strategic, having strong belief, being futuristic, which is a visionary, connectedness, which means, working with people and really connecting with people, and significance, which I think is the leadership part of things. So for me, my unique perspective comes from being a visionary and a strategist, whereby I can help people step out of their reality and have that, what you call the umbrella view, the eagle-eyed view of things that are happening in your reality, rather than being like one of my mentors would say, stay with the problem, not in the problem. So I help people to stay with the problem to resolve it rather than stay in the problem. So that's my unique ability to help you, create hope as a visionary and project and help you project towards that person you are becoming or want to become.
Interesting. The next question to you, Patience, is that, this is now the age of the young leaders. The millennials and the Gen Zs are now coming into positions of authority, leadership in organizations. And yet there are people who are from the older leaders. As a coach, what are the areas that you see different between coaching younger leaders and the older leaders?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to coach. So, so for the emerging leaders, I see that they need to have that, be given that self-belief, and also discover they're forming their own opinions of the world and building the confidence to bring their own perspective, their own leadership style, discovering their leadership strengths. So it's about helping them discover that leadership strength, helping them carve out their own approach to influencing people in a positive way. but helping them take responsibility to believe that they can bring about the change that is needed. And a lot of times I've felt like this is the time as to really work with a lot of young people to develop that potential. So I do have like an organization I set up called Future Leaders and Future Leaders and Youth Organization to be able to facilitate that. But when it comes to the older generation or the more established leader, what we're facing is a fast-paced changing world. So it's how does that leader now, you can't stay with your old ways, you have to adapt to the new ways of thinking. You have to also work in coordination with the younger generation to hear them, to understand them. So for me, it's about helping that older leader to adapt to the fast changing paces of the world, to make the tough decisions that need to be made, and stay in tune with the current needs of people to create positive change, to be a role model and a mentor, but also a mentor that is actually evolving with the times and help others evolve as well.
Interesting. Another question that is often asked is that how does a coachee evaluate whether they have a good coach?
I think you need to tune into what are my values. Do they align with the values of this coach? What results has this coach got for other people like myself? So do your research, ask questions, ask them for referrals so that you can find out. Then I think the key main thing about coaching is if you could do it yourself, you would have done it already. So don't get somebody that will only pat you on the back. Look for somebody that will push you outside your comfort zone into your empowerment zone and will really not allow you to believe your own excuses, which come across as challenges, but they can be excuses sometimes to not do what you need to do. So I think that strong personality that doesn't allow you to stay in your comfort zone and accept your weaknesses as done deal.
Interesting. Let me now move to your books. You're a published author. Tell me about your books.
So I had 2 books, and I'm writing a third one. So my first book is called Aspiration to Transformation: 10 Steps to Get You from a Place of Discomfort to Your Empowerment Zone. And it's on Amazon. And I wrote that, self-published it, as a personal growth guide to help people develop a growth mindset when they're stepping out of the business world, corporate world, into entrepreneurship. You have to develop that entrepreneurial mindset, but you also have to check the gaps in your mindset. So I wrote that book. It's like a checklist, a 10-step checklist. The second one was where I wrote a bestseller alongside other co-authors. There is sometimes a gap in the way we see ourselves as human beings. A human being is spirit, soul, and body, not just soul and body that most of us focus on. So this book was to challenge the way we also look at leadership. So it's called the Spiritual Secrets, the X Factor, the Spiritual Secrets of Successful Executives and Entrepreneurs. And it's a leadership book that really looks at the journey of a person who comes into leadership, but also tuning to their spiritual side to accomplish it. My third book, which will be published next year, will be focusing on my journey as an introverted entrepreneur and the framework to help people really adapt in an extroverted world.
Very, very interesting. And my last question to you, Patience, and this is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your own amazing journey and all the knowledge you have about coaching, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from our conversation and from all your experience?
So the first one is believe in yourself. I have a motto that says impossible is an opinion,
Yeah.
Feel free to disagree and carve out your own path to success.
Yeah.
So the first message I would want to leave with everybody, and I keep leaving, is you have to find ways of believing in yourself. The second one is have faith in a higher power. You will have barriers, you have challenges in life. There is a higher power out there. I am a person of faith, Christian faith, and I believe that God is the ultimate answer to everything. So he will provide. That's the second thing. The third thing is take charge of your own growth. So growth is a process. It is a journey, not just a destination. So walk the process, trust the process of growth in you and for your business as well.
Very interesting. And on that note, patience and your 3 amazing lessons: believe in yourself, have faith in a higher power, and third one you said was take charge
of your growth and trust the process.
Of your own growth. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your own journey. Thank you for talking to me about the work that you're doing with introverted women leaders, about your 4 tips to help introverts find focus to succeed in a noisy, fast world. Thank you also for talking to me about coaching and your philosophies and what has influenced you, and who or what has influenced you. And finally, thank you for talking to me about your books. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.